In poker, they say all you need is a chip and a chair. And for Michael Wang, it was pure survival. Down to just 5 chips in the $10,000 pot limit Omaha Championship at the 2025 WSOP. He launched one of the most epic comebacks the game has ever seen. Poker lives for moments like this. Michael the Grinder Mizrachi crushing the $10 million main event. Jerry Yang turning a $225 satellite into an $8.25 million title. And Peter Eastgate becoming the youngest main event champion in history. These aren't just wins. They're the stuff of poker legend. Wang's beginning. Before the bright lights of Las Vegas and the prestige of gold bracelets, Michael Wang was just another online grinder with big dreams and a modest bankroll. Born in New Orleans and later settling in New Jersey, he cut his teeth in the early days of online poker, learning through trial, error, and countless late-night sessions. The young Wang wasn't a prodigy who won instantly. He was a student of the game who understood that poker's real currency was discipline. By the time he transitioned to live play, Wang had something few could match: patience sharpened by years of silent digital warfare. 2 bracelets and a dream. By 2025, Wang had already secured his place in WSOP history. His first bracelet came in 2015 in a $5,000 no-limit hold'em event, a breakthrough moment that proved he could close against the best. His second came in 2022 in the $3,000 no-limit hold'em event, cementing him as more than a one-hit wonder. But for Wang, there was still a glaring blank spot in his resume: a high-prestige, big buy-in championship event. That's where the $10,000 PLO championship entered the picture. It wasn't just about the prize money, though $1.3 million would be life-changing. It was about proving that his skill translated to every form of poker at the highest levels. All in and out. The early stages of event number 74 were a gauntlet. With 874 entries and a total prize pool north of $8.1 million, every table was a landmine field of elite professionals and fearless high rollers. Wang started solid, picking his spots and chipping up without taking unnecessary risks. But poker is never a straight climb. One brutal misstep, a wrong read in a massive pot, sent his stack tumbling. By the time the dust settled, Wang was staring at what most would call a death sentence. 5 chips. Not 5 big blinds. Not 5,000 in chips. 5 physical chips. 5 chips and hope. This is where most stories end. But for Wang, it was the moment everything began. He posted his forced blind, effectively committing his tournament life, and somehow doubled up. Then doubled again, and again. Soon his tiny stack had turned into a short stack. A short stack became a medium one. Players began to notice. The guy they'd written off was suddenly stealing pots, picking up premium starting hands, and playing like he had nothing to lose. It wasn't reckless. It was liberated. Every decision was sharp, every move calculated. The miracle was taking shape. The true comeback. Pot Limit Omaha is a volatile game. Big hands collide more often, and the swings are violent. But Wang navigated it with surgeon-like precision. He extracted maximum value from strong holdings and avoided getting tangled in high-variance spots without an edge. The rail began to buzz. Whispers of the 5-chip comeback spread like wildfire through the Amazon room. By the time the final table was set, Wang wasn't the underdog anymore. He was one of the big dogs with 8.1 million in chips. Very quickly it became clear. Only one man stood between Wang and the bracelet: Zulker Naibuz. Heads Up Glory. Heads Up in a Pot Limit Omaha is a knife fight in a phone booth. Fast, brutal, and unforgiving. Chips flew across the felt like shrapnel. It all ended with a savage cooler. Full house against full house. Zulker believed he'd found the perfect spot, calling with 10s full of aces, only to see Wang reveal jacks full of 10s. From 5 lonely chips to $1,394,579 and a third WSOP bracelet. An all-time poker legend was made. Reflection under the spotlight. When the microphones came out and the cameras crowded in, Wang's words were calm but heavy with meaning. "It still doesn't feel real," he admitted. The irony wasn't lost on him. how close he'd come to walking away empty-handed, how thin the line was between disaster and destiny. He spoke of variance, patience, and seizing opportunities, but he knew this epic turnaround wasn't just a win. It was a defining chapter in the story of who he was as a player. Legacy in the making. The victory brought his career tournament earnings to over $8.8 million. But stats alone couldn't capture the magic of what had just happened. Around the poker world, the 5-chip comeback was already becoming shorthand for the impossible. Newcomers and veterans alike found inspiration in his run, a reminder that in poker and in life, no situation is truly hopeless until the last card falls. What's next for Wang? With the bracelet still fresh on his wrist, Wang was already eyeing the next challenge. Another WSOP, a WPT title, maybe Player of the Year. One thing was certain, he'd proven himself among the most dangerous, resilient players alive. And somewhere, a new player would hear the story of the man who came back from 5 chips and believe they could too. Wang's comeback was the kind of story that reminds us of why we love poker. Grit, patience, and the will to fight until the very last card. But in the same summer, on the same grand stage, another legend was busy writing his own chapter in the history books. And this one wasn't about survival. It was about domination. Michael Mizrachi's $10 million main event domination. The Grinder Summer of Glory. This summer in Las Vegas, poker history wasn't just made, it was rewritten. Michael the Grinder Mizrachi didn't just win the biggest tournament in the game, he owned it. And when the dust settled, he walked away with $10 million, his 8th WSOP bracelet, and a place in the Poker Hall of Fame. All in one night. The stage was set, the 2025 WSOP main event. Thousands of hopefuls, millions on the line. And at the final table, one man with the chip lead, the pedigree, and the killer instinct to finish the job. From the very first hand, Mizrachi was playing with one purpose. He was here to crush. One by one, Mizrachi dismantled the competition. Just pure, relentless pressure. Every time the chips went in, the grinder had the goods, or the guts to make his opponents fold. Heads up for the title. When it came down to heads-up play, there was no hesitation. Mizrachi turned the screws, leaning on years of experience in high-stakes warfare. It didn't take long before the final pot was pushed his way, and with it, the $10 million payday. 8 bracelets, main event champion. But that was just half the story. The summer double. Less than 3 weeks earlier, Mizrachi had conquered the $50,000 Poker Players Championship for a record 4th time, taking home another $1.3 million. That event is considered one of the toughest in the world. And Mizrachi made it look easy. Winning both in the same summer? That's not just rare, it's unprecedented. We scoured the internet to find the most legendary poker stories. Now it's your turn to help out. Hit like and subscribe to keep the epic poker content rolling. The Hall of Fame moment. As the confetti settled and Mizrachi stood under the bright lights, clutching the main event bracelet, the room already felt electric. But then the announcer's voice cut through the noise with something nobody saw coming. This wasn't just a champion's ceremony, it was a coronation. Right there, in front of the entire poker world, the WSOP announced that Michael Mizrachi was being inducted into the Poker Hall of Fame immediately. No months of speculation, no long speeches, no waiting for the next year's class. The crowd erupted. Players on the rail, many of them legends themselves, stood to applaud. You could see the moment hit Mizrachi. Years of grinding, thousands of hours on the felt, victories and defeats, all leading to this instant. 2 of the biggest titles in the game, $11.3 million in winnings, Hall of Fame status, all in one series. This wasn't a heater, this was a statement. He isn't just back, he's on top of the poker world. But poker's history isn't just written by the giants of today. It's built on the unforgettable journeys of those who came from nothing and rose to the very top. And few stories capture that better than Jerry Yang's $8.25 million miracle. From refugee to world champion, Jerry Yang's $8.25 million WSOP Miracle, the $225 ticket to immortality. Some poker dreams start with a high roller buy-in and a mountain of chips. Jerry Yang started with a $225 satellite and a prayer. In 2007, this Laotian refugee, a social worker with just one live cash to his name, walked into the World Series of Poker main event as a complete unknown. 11 days later, he walked out a world champion with $8.25 million in his pocket. This is the story of the man who came from nothing and conquered everything. From Laos to the lights of Vegas. Yang's journey to the main event stage didn't start with poker, it started in survival. Born in Laos, his family fled during the country's violent upheaval, spending years in refugee camps before finding safety in the United States. He built a quiet life as a social worker in California, playing small-stakes poker on the side. The main event was a dream, until he won a $225 satellite seat and decided to take a shot on poker's biggest stage. The early grind. From day one, Yang's approach stood out. He played tight, calculated poker. But when he saw weakness, he attacked with fearless aggression. By the time the field whittled down from 6,358 players to a few hundred, Yang wasn't just surviving, he was building a stack and gaining confidence with every pot. The final table climb. When the final table began, Yang was 8th in chips out of 9 players. Not the position you want when staring down some of the toughest competition of the summer. But that's when the switch flipped. Almost immediately, Yang started pulling the trigger, big bets, fearless bluffs, and perfectly timed value shoves. One elimination, then another, then another. By the end, Yang had personally knocked out 7 of his 8 opponents, bulldozing the table with a mix of heart and instinct. The heads-up moment. It all came down to Jerry Yang versus Tuan Lam. In the final hand, Yang called lambs and watched the board run out to seal his destiny. When the river hit, the rail exploded. Friends, family, and total strangers cheering for the man who defied every odd. Yang's hands went to his face, overcome by the realization. The refugee kid, who once had nothing, had just won poker's richest prize. Legacy of the champion. Jerry Yang's victory wasn't just a poker win. It was the ultimate underdog story. From a $225 satellite to $8.25 million. From a refugee camp to the world stage. And in a final table performance for the ages, he proved that heart, courage, and belief can be just as powerful as any hand in the deck. But just 1 year later, the main event stage would crown a very different kind of champion. Not an underdog, but a young prodigy ready to make history. At just 22 years old, Peter Eastgate stepped into the spotlight and walked out the youngest world champion poker had ever seen. The youngest world champion, Peter Eastgate's $9.15 million WSOP triumph. The kid who took the crown. In 2008, the poker world was looking for its next breakout star. What it got was a 22-year-old from Denmark named Peter Eastgate, a player who walked into the WSOP main event with ice in his veins and walked out with $9.15 million, the bracelet, and the title of youngest world champion in history. From Denmark to the desert, Eastgate wasn't a household name when the main event began. He was a quiet, methodical online grinder who had built a solid reputation in the European poker scene. This was his first main event, and while most first-timers hoped to just cash, Eastgate had his sights set on something bigger. The road to November 9. The 2008 main event was the first to introduce the November 9 concept. The final table was delayed for months to build hype. Eastgate cruised through the early days, leaning on disciplined, positionally aware poker to accumulate chips without unnecessary risk. By the time the final table lineup was set, he was one of the big stacks, and he wasn't done growing it. Final table patience, final table firepower. When the cards went back in the air months later, Eastgate's strategy was clear. Avoid ego battles, let others self-destruct, and pick off spots with surgical precision. The young Dane mixed well-timed aggression with icy discipline, slowly tightening his grip on the table. Big pots went his way, but it was his restraint in marginal spots that kept him alive and dangerous. Heads Up with the Giant. In the final heads-up match, Eastgate faced Russia's Ivan Demidov, a fearless, aggressive opponent who had been steamrolling much of the final table. The duel was intense, with both players trading blows and building the tension. The final hand saw Eastgate's 5-high straight beat Demidov's 2-pair, and in an instant, the bracelet was his. At 22 years and 10 months old, Peter Eastgate had shattered Phil Hellmuth's record for youngest main event champion. Legacy and the fade to black. Eastgate's reign at the top was short but unforgettable. He played a few more years before stepping away from poker entirely in 2010, even auctioning off his main event bracelet for charity. But his 2008 run remains one of the most technically flawless and composed performances ever seen on the WSOP stage. A reminder that sometimes the calmest player in the room is the one you should fear the most. Make sure you like and subscribe to never miss a legendary poker story, epic poker fight, or massive meltdown. Thanks for watching.